Good morning. It is Monday, March 22nd. I'm Jason Stanton. This is my morning musing for today. I'm reading from, as I continue to do, our Lenten devotional at First Lutheran and again. And this week, our devotions are centered around again and again, we are reformed. The assumption being that we are reformed by God, by the grace of God. Since all is grace, it's all grace. And so the reading, I'm reading from page 32. The text is rooted in John chapter 12, verses 20 to 33. And in the last paragraph here, second to last, it says, change even when welcome means death. And that's what I've been thinking about, is what kinds of change in my life have led to death, and not death in a way that feels like opposite of life, but death as in an end of one thing that oftentimes in life leads to another. So as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about different deaths I've experienced, and not the kind where, a grandparent has died or someone I've cared about has died, but the kind of thing that's been a major ending in my life. And I'll bet you can think of some for yourself, right? Maybe times you've moved, new jobs you've taken on, maybe a friendship that died. I was thinking about in 5th grade, I was 10 years old when we moved from Northern Illinois to Northern Wisconsin. And I remember rooting for the Illini when there were basketball games. I remember, as I memorized the states, finding the most interest in the land of Lincoln, because that's the state I lived in. When we moved, that changed. There was a death of identity, you could say. And I was aware, that's the first death I can remember that I was aware of. And then going to college, there's like a death of childhood once one enters into adulthood, whether it's to college, your first job, living on your own, whatever it is. Marriage saw a death of single Jason. And then came what I think was the most obvious example of a death like this for me. And that was when Sophia was born, our oldest, who's now 16. I remember vividly, in the midst of the deep fatigue that first-time parent Jason was experiencing, I remember writing a letter. I was actually in the practice, my two best friends and I from seminary, we were actually writing snail mail letters to each other at this juncture. We don't still, but it was almost like a way to remember forever, like to write it, almost like journaling to each other. And I remember writing to them, and I've mentioned this before in sermons, but in case you haven't heard it before, I remember writing to them, I'm no different. Everybody keeps telling me, oh, this is going to change everything. I'm still me. I still like coffee in the morning and reading my boring history books and doing my work. And, I'm still Jason. And it didn't take actually very long for me to figure out how foolish that was, that who I was and what that meant for my hour-to-hour and week-to-week life, my priorities, pretty much everything about my life had died. Even though it was a welcome change, it meant death to the life that was for me. And then since that kind of most obvious time of death, I've watched my kids change, which has meant the death of infancy as they become toddlers, and then the death of toddlerdom as they become kids, and then tweens, and then teens, and now young adults. And with each phase, and we were just looking at Andrew, our middle child, he's 13. We were looking at his pictures as he put his school pictures into his frame. We have all the pictures from when they were babies in one frame, so that every time we put a new one in, we're looking at all the pictures from the last however many years. And I mean, it's like a different life trying to remember him as this little baby. And then as that, you can, with this picture, you can just see him in your mind's eye toddling around. And then to see the change that's happened even in a year, in this COVID year, it's incredible. And it is like these are different people because it was such a different life, a different time, so much change. And it is like a death. And in each of these phases is to be grieved. It's okay to grieve them. But in each of these new lives, I am for certain different. Could the same be said of our faith lives? You know, as we grow in our understanding with God, my questions change, my responses change. When I think of myself in confirmation as a 12 or 13-year-old and the things that mattered to me, and then as I think of how I behaved as a Christian in college or seminary, in my first call, what mattered to me in my first call versus what kinds of things matter to me now. I have died many times to old versions of myself. I know you have too. And where this text today brings me is, I believe that God is in every reformation, fitting me for abundant life. And so I'll keep on dying, believing that abundant life is what God has in store. Keep faith alive.